What truly went down in the dimly lit castles and hushed gardens of the 1300s? Did hearts truly burn for forbidden love? And how did lovers risk everything to speak their truth? Number 1. The language of symbolic objects and clothing. In the winding lanes and grand halls of medieval Europe, where watchful eyes seemed to peer from every shadow, a simple brooch or a carefully placed ribbon could tell a tale more dangerous than any spoken word. The world was a canvas of unspoken meanings, and lovers yearning to bridge the gap between their desires and the iron grip of societal rules became masters of this silent artistry. Imagine a young woman, perhaps lady years old, whose heart belonged not to the grizzled merchant her father had chosen, but to a dashing knight, Sir Gawain, a man with little land but much valor. Direct communication was a perilous game. A letter might be intercepted, a whispered word overheard. But a gift, a seemingly innocent token, could carry a freight of passion and peril. Consider a delicate piece of embroidery, a lady's work, a small favor offered to a knight before he rode to tournament. It might seem merely a gesture of courtly respect, but within its stitches lay a secret. Particular flower, stitched in a certain hue, could signify devotion. A knot in the silk thread might be a plea for a rendezvous. Professor Eleanor Ferris, a scholar of medieval textiles, noted how common it was for embroidered items to hold highly personalized, even private meanings. A lady might include a specific small, nearly invisible flaw in the pattern, a tiny mistake that only her beloved would recognize as a sign of her agitation or longing. Sir Gawain, receiving a scarf with a single misplaced golden thread among the silver, would understand it was not merely a decorative accessory, but a worried heart's coded message. The very imperfections became part of the intricate language. Gloves, too, played a significant role in this silent drama. A lady's glove, dropped seemingly by accident, was not merely a forgotten item. If she dropped it near a particular suitor and then quickly retrieved it, avoiding eye contact, it might be a subtle dismissal. But if she let it lie even for a moment and cast a fleeting, almost imperceptible glance towards a specific knight, it could be an invitation, a challenge, a secret request for him to prove his devotion. This was the ultimate high-stakes flirtation, playing out in plain sight, yet visible only to those who knew the rules of this unspoken game. The act of returning a lost glove, especially if it was a lady's most exquisite embroidered kidskin glove, could be an opportunity for a man to convey his feelings, perhaps by kissing the delicate fabric or holding it a moment too long. These subtle touches were not merely polite gestures. They were coded exchanges of emotional currency. Rings, often exchanged in betrothal or marriage, could also carry clandestine messages. A ring worn on a specific finger or oriented in a particular direction might signal availability, rejection, or even distress. A lady, perhaps wearing a ring gifted by her betrothed, might wear a smaller, more discreet ring, a circlet of braided hair or a simple silver band on her pinky finger. If she allowed this smaller ring to be seen even momentarily by another man, it might be a dangerous signal of her secret affection, a silent rebellion against her fate. Historians often point to the highly symbolic nature of jewelry in medieval society, where each gem, each metal, could carry layers of meaning known only to a select few. The arrangement of rings on a finger could tell a story to a discerning eye. Consider the narrative of Alara, a young noblewoman destined for a strategic marriage. Her heart, however, was tethered to a stable hand. Finn, whose humble origins meant their love was an absolute impossibility in the eyes of the world. Alara possessed a small, intricately carved wooden bird, a gift from Finn, which she kept hidden beneath her voluminous sleeves. When in the presence of Finn, amidst the clamor of the stable yard or the bustle of the castle grounds, she would subtly adjust her sleeve, allowing the bird's head to peek out for just a fleeting second, a gesture unseen by any but him. This simple, almost imperceptible display was their lifeline. It affirmed their secret bond, a reminder that despite the chasm of their social stations, their love persisted. If her father was particularly vexing, or if her forced marriage loomed closer, she might show the bird with its wings drooping a sign of her sorrow. Finn, noticing this, would understand her pain and perhaps respond by leaving a carefully chosen wildflower near her usual path, a symbol of hope or endurance. Ribbons, so commonplace in medieval attire, could be imbued with potent secret meanings. A lady might wear a specific color ribbon in her hair or on her sleeve that only her beloved would recognize as a secret symbol of her mood or a private message. A red ribbon, for instance, might be a general symbol of passion, but a red ribbon tied with a specific type of knot, known only to two lovers, could mean, "Meet me by the old oak at dusk." Professor Alistair Finch, a researcher in medieval courtly love, elaborates on how these seemingly trivial adornments were often carefully chosen and observed. A knight might carry a lady's favor, a small piece of her embroidery, a ribbon from her sleeve, into battle. The specific color or pattern of this favor was not merely a mark of his lady's identity, but could also secretly signify a particular promise or a hope. If the ribbon was green, it might be a sign of fresh beginnings or new love. If blue, fidelity. If black, sorrow or farewell. The intensity of the color or the specific materials, silk, linen, wool, could also add layers of nuance to the message. A frayed ribbon might express distress. A freshly laundered one, renewed hope. Even seemingly mundane objects, like handkerchiefs, could become instruments of secret communication. A lady dropping her handkerchief might be an accident, but the way she dropped it, the specific gesture she used to retrieve it, or the person she asked to pick it up, could all convey a hidden meaning. If she were to deliberately drop it near a man she favored, making sure his eyes met hers, as she did, it was a bold, albeit silent, invitation. If she then made a point of not picking it up herself, allowing him to do so and perhaps briefly touching his hand as he returned it, it was a deeply intimate gesture fraught with unspoken desire. Quality of the handkerchief itself, its embroidery or lace, could also contribute to the message. Plain, simple handkerchief might be a polite gesture, but one adorned with a small, unique symbol, perhaps a tiny bee or a crescent moon, would be a sign meant only for the knowing eyes of her secret love. The very act of folding a handkerchief a certain way or tucking it into a sleeve rather than a belt could communicate volumes. The art of giving and receiving gifts, especially small personal ones, was a highly refined code. A piece of fruit, an apple, or a pear, presented in a specific way, could convey an intention. An apple, in some medieval symbolism, represented love or temptation. If a suitor gave a lady an apple and she accepted it, it was a good sign. But if she peeled it in a particular manner or took only a small bite, it might be a coded response, a signal of hesitation or guarded acceptance. Similarly, a small carved wooden comb, a simple and practical gift, could be transformed into a secret message. If the teeth were broken in a specific pattern, or if a particular animal was carved into its handle, it might be a subtle reference to a shared memory or a coded instruction for a future meeting. These were not direct messages, but rather symbolic gestures that relied on shared understanding and a deep intuitive bond between the two individuals. The very texture of the wood, its scent, or the sound it made when placed upon a table could be part of the clandestine dialogue. The strategic placement of personal items within a shared space was another subtle art form. A lady might leave a specific book open to a particular page in the common room, knowing her beloved would pass through. The passage itself might contain a hidden message, or simply the act of leaving it open would signal her awareness of his presence or her current emotional state. A small personal item, like a thimble or a sewing needle placed on a window ledge might be a subtle indicator that she was thinking of him or that it was safe to approach. These were ephemeral, easily dismissed actions, yet they carried immense weight for those who understood their true meaning. The subtle shift of the chair, the placement of the shawl over a particular armrest, or the orientation of a lute on a stand, all could be deliberate signals almost imperceptible to the casual observer, yet shouting volumes to the intended recipient. The concept of a love token was very much alive, but it extended beyond mere sentimental value into the realm of clandestine communication. A specific brooch worn on a cloak or a dress might not just be a decorative item, but a signal. If it was worn upside down or on the left side instead of the right, it might convey a mood or a message that only the beloved would understand. A brooch, shaped like a bird in flight, might symbolize escape or freedom, while one depicting a chained animal might speak of captivity or despair. Professor Fiona Campbell, a specialist in medieval material culture, highlights how every object, from the grandest tapestry to the simplest piece of pottery, was embedded with layers of meaning, often religious or social, but sometimes deeply personal and private. Choice of material, the craftsmanship, the very subject matter of the design, all these elements contributed to a silent language understood by an exclusive few. These tokens were not just gifts, they were living messages, carried on the body, displayed for the knowing eyes, or hidden away as sacred secret vows. Number 2, the language of flowers and herbs. In an age before constant digital connection, when nature was an omnipresent force, medieval lovers looked to the natural world for inspiration and for secret messages. The subtle language of flowers and herbs, though more formally codified in later centuries, had deep roots in medieval society, particularly within the world of courtly love and folk traditions. Each plant, each blossom, carried centuries of accumulated symbolism, often rooted in mythology, religious allegory, or medicinal properties. For a lover, choosing the right flower or a specific arrangement of herbs was like writing a poem, but one that could be smelled, touched, and understood without a single spoken word. Consider the humble rose. Everyone knew the rose symbolized love. Color of the rose, its stage of bloom, and even the presence or absence of thorns could add layers of nuance. A red rose might signify deep passion, a white rose purity or new beginnings, a yellow rose jealousy or friendship. But a red rose given without its thorns, perhaps carefully clipped, could be a declaration of love devoid of pain or a promise of unwavering devotion. A fully bloomed rose might signify mature love, while a tightly closed bud might suggest nascent feelings or a cautious hope. Professor Gwendolyn Hayes, a historian of medieval botany, points out that while florography as a strict system came later, the symbolic use of specific plants was deeply ingrained in medieval thought and literature. A lady might subtly press a rose petal into a letter before sealing it, knowing that its scent and presence would convey a message beyond the written words. Herbs, too, held potent meanings, often tied to their medicinal or culinary uses. Rosemary, often associated with remembrance, could be given to a departing lover as a promise to never forget them. Associated with courage, might be discreetly shared to encourage a fearful heart. Sage, for wisdom, might be a subtle suggestion for a difficult decision. These were not random choices. They were carefully selected tokens, each a word in a silent conversation. A woman perhaps named Marguerite, confined to her chamber and forbidden from seeing her beloved, a young artisan named Henri, might enlist a sympathetic servant to carry a small, carefully arranged sprig of herbs to him. A sprig of rosemary intertwined with a single sprig of willow, for instance, might silently communicate, "Remember me and mourn my loneliness." Henry, upon receiving it, would understand the depth of her sorrow and her unwavering fidelity. The very act of identifying the plants, their distinct scents and textures, added to the secrecy and intimacy of the message. The language of flowers extended beyond simply giving a single blossom. The arrangement of flowers, their placement, or even their absence, could speak volumes. A bouquet delivered to a noblewoman might seem like a mere gesture of politeness. But if a particular flower was placed upside down, or if a specific bloom was conspicuously absent, it could subtly alter the entire meaning of the message. For instance, a bouquet of marigolds, generally associated with sorrow or despair, could be given to express sympathy. But if one marigold was carefully placed among cheerful daisies, it might be a subtle message of hope despite suffering, known only to the intended recipient. The way the flowers were bound, the type of ribbon used, or even the type of foliage included, could add further layers to the coded communication. The context of the plant also mattered. A lover might arrange for a particular flower to be prominently displayed in a garden or courtyard where the beloved was known to frequent. A night-blooming jasmine, its heady scent filling the evening air, might be a subtle call for a secret meeting. A specific type of ivy, often associated with fidelity and eternal bonds, seen growing on a wall or depicted in a tapestry, could be a silent affirmation of undying love. This was especially effective in communal spaces, where direct interaction was impossible. Quick glance, a subtle nod towards a specific plant, could be enough to convey a profound message. The fleeting nature of a bloom, its lifespan, could also be part of the message. A flower that withered quickly might signify fleeting joy, while one that lasted long could represent enduring affection. Folkloric beliefs surrounding plants further enriched this hidden language. The mandrake root, often associated with fertility and powerful magic, could be a dangerous yet potent symbol for a desperate lover hoping for a child or a magical intervention. A sprig of mistletoe, commonly associated with peace and love, could be a more innocent symbol of affection. These were not just pretty adornments. They were vessels of deeply held beliefs and potent emotions. A lover might subtly leave a sachet of dried herbs under a beloved's pillow, not just for a pleasant scent, but for the specific properties associated with those herbs: lavender for peace, mugwort for dreams, or vervain for protection against evil. The very act of preparing such a sachet, grinding the herbs and combining them, was a powerful act of devotion, imbuing the gift with intention and secret power. Even seemingly mundane plants like grains or fruits could carry symbolic weight. A sheaf of wheat might represent prosperity and growth, but also a hope for a shared future. A single cherry, especially a double cherry, could symbolize shared love or twins. These were subtle clues, often exchanged in public settings, where direct conversation was impossible. A basket of freshly picked berries, offered as a gift, might contain a specific type of berry that only the lovers knew held a secret meaning, perhaps related to a specific shared memory or a coded instruction. The act of sharing food, especially food gathered from nature, was inherently intimate and could be easily turned into a medium for secret messages. The way the fruit was peeled or the number of seeds left could also hold coded significance. Consider the plight of a lady named Isabel, confined to a castle by a tyrannical father. Her secret love, a troubadour named Lucien, often performed in the castle hall. They could never speak freely. However, Lucien was a keen observer of the castle gardens. Isabel, through a sympathetic servant, would subtly alter the arrangements of flowers in her window box. If she placed a red carnation among the white ones, it meant danger, do not approach. If she reversed it, placing white among red, it signaled all clear, I long for your presence. Lucien, performing below her window, would casually glance up his eyes, swiftly reading the silent message in the petals. This was their lifeline, a fragile thread woven from the delicate beauty of nature. The specific variety of carnation, its size, or the number of blossoms could add even further nuance, allowing for a complex array of messages to be conveyed through a seemingly innocent display of floral artistry. The very act of planting a specific flower or herb in a garden could be a long-term message, a silent vow visible to the beloved. A woman might plant a bed of forget-me-nots, a clear symbol of enduring memory in a place visible from her lover's usual route. Or a man might cultivate a particular rose bush, known only to them as their rose, its blooms marking the passage of their secret love story. These were messages inscribed not on parchment, but in the living earth, subject to the seasons, a testament to the enduring power of their affection. The care taken in tending to the plants, their health and vibrancy, could also mirror the state of their secret relationship. A thriving bed of herbs could indicate happiness and ease, while wilting plants might signal distress or neglect. Number 3, coded messages in books and manuscripts. In an age when books were precious and literacy less widespread, the written word held immense power. And for medieval lovers it became a clandestine medium for passionate, forbidden communication. Far from being simple pages of text, manuscripts could be transformed into intricate puzzles, their true messages hidden within plain sight, accessible only to those who held the key. The very act of possessing a book, especially one shared between two individuals, could be a secret in itself, a tangible link in a world of separation. Imagine a young scholar, Thomas, and his beloved, a noblewoman named Catherine, both avid readers. Direct letters were too risky, prone to interception by suspicious parents or watchful attendants. Instead, they relied on shared texts. Thomas might lend Catherine a beautifully illuminated psalter or a volume of romances. Within its pages, the true message lay hidden. He might subtly mark specific words or phrases on different pages, perhaps with a tiny, almost invisible prick of a pin, or a faint, nearly imperceptible ink dot next to a chosen letter. When strung together, these letters or words would form a secret sentence. "Meet me by the old mill at midnight." The very act of deciphering this, of piecing together the fragmented clues across dozens of pages, would build the anticipation and deepen the intimacy of their shared secret. Professor Miriam Davies, a scholar of medieval literature, notes how common marginalia was in medieval texts, not all of it scholarly, much of it personal, providing ripe ground for hidden meanings. Marginalia, the notes and doodles scribbled in the margins of books, could be a rich source of coded messages. While some marginalia was genuine commentary or artistic embellishment, lovers could use it for their own purposes. A small drawing of a bird in flight, placed next to a specific passage, might indicate a longing for freedom or a specific rendezvous point. A seemingly random doodle of a heart with an arrow might not be random at all, but a direct reference to a shared experience or a particular emotion. These subtle additions, often made with a lighter hand or in a different colored ink, would be discernible only to the intended recipient who knew what to look for. Placement of a flower pressing a lock of hair or a tiny dried leaf within the pages of a beloved book could also serve as a profound, silent message, a physical embodiment of their shared secret. The choice of the book itself could be a message. A book of chivalric romances might convey a message of longing for adventure and forbidden love. A book of religious psalms might offer comfort and solace, but also provide a safe cover for hidden messages within its spiritual verses. For instance, Thomas might give Catherine a book of love poetry, a popular genre in the medieval period. But instead of the overt verses, the message could be found in the first letter of each line on a specific page, forming an acrostic message visible only if one knew the key. Or perhaps only certain stanzas, seemingly unconnected, when read in a specific order, would reveal a hidden meaning. The very act of selecting a particular poem or story to share could be a coded choice, reflecting their own narrative or current predicament. Even the physical state of the manuscript could carry a message. Page, purposefully dog-eared in a specific way, or a section of the book appearing more worn than others, could indicate a passage of significance. Perhaps a single page might be subtly stained with a tear, or a specific passage gently highlighted with a faded finger mark, conveying emotion without words. The binding of the book itself could conceal secrets. Some medieval books had hollowed-out compartments in their covers, tiny spaces where a miniature letter, a lock of hair, or a small symbolic object could be hidden. These secret compartments were rarely discovered by casual inspection, offering a secure, albeit risky, means of communication for the most desperate of lovers. The weight of the book, its texture, the distinct scent of its aged parchment and leather, all these elements could become part of the intimate tactile language shared between two souls. Consider the meticulousness required. A lover might painstakingly copy a passage from a well-known text, but introduce subtle errors, a misspelling here, a transposed letter there. Only the beloved possessing the original text or knowing the passage by heart would notice these deviations. The errors themselves would be the code, perhaps spelling out a name, a date, or a command. This required a profound understanding of language and an exceptional memory on the part of both sender and receiver, adding to the intellectual intimacy of their bond. Professor Gregory Thorne, an expert in medieval chirography, highlights how simple substitution ciphers or prearranged code words were sometimes embedded within otherwise innocuous text. A particular word appearing unexpectedly, or a phrase that seemed out of place, could signal a hidden message. Sometimes, the code was in the very material of the letter itself, hidden within a book. Medieval paper, or parchment, often made from animal skin, could be treated in ways that allowed for invisible ink. Secret messages could be written between the lines of a normal letter, using substances like lemon juice, milk, or urine. These messages would only become visible when the paper was heated over a flame or treated with a specific reagent. A beloved might receive a seemingly innocuous letter from her secret love, concealed within a borrowed book. Upon receiving it, she would heat it carefully, watching as the true forbidden word slowly materialized between the innocent lines of family news or trivial observations. This was a dangerous game, as overheating could destroy the message entirely, but the thrill of seeing the hidden words appear would be unparalleled. The very process of revealing the message became a ritual of intimacy and secrecy. Choice of specific illuminations or illustrations within a manuscript could also serve as a hidden language. Medieval manuscripts were often richly decorated with intricate border designs, small vignettes, and full-page illustrations. A lover might commission a scribe to include a specific personal motif within an illustration, a tiny, almost hidden depiction of a shared symbol, a specific animal, or even a miniature portrait of the beloved, disguised within a crowd scene. This required considerable resources and trust in the scribe, making it a rare but potent form of communication. The way a certain character in an illustration held a specific object, or the direction of their gaze, could be a subtle nod to a shared secret or a particular feeling. The colors used in the illustration could also hold symbolic meaning known only to the lovers. The mere act of sharing a book, a private and intimate object, could be a message in itself. In a society where most reading was done aloud or in groups, the act of two individuals quietly sharing a book, perhaps turning its pages together, could be a deeply personal and coded interaction. It was a shared intellectual space, a sanctuary for their thoughts and feelings, away from the prying eyes and judgmental whispers of the court. The specific book could become a touchstone, a memory palace, for their shared experiences and unspoken desires. The weight of the book, the scent of its old pages, the feel of the parchment, these sensory details could evoke powerful memories and unspoken emotions, deepening the unspoken bond between the secret lovers. Number 4. Musical ciphers and ballads. In the grand halls and quiet courtyards of medieval castles, music was not merely entertainment. It was the pulse of social life, a vehicle for storytelling and, crucially, a discreet medium for lovers to weave their secret messages. Minstrels, troubadours, and even noble amateurs, with their lutes, harps, and sweet voices, could become unwitting or willing couriers of forbidden desires, their melodies carrying words far more potent than those overtly sung. Consider the wandering troubadour, a common figure in medieval times, moving from court to court. A knight deeply smitten with a lady whose family forbade their union might commission a troubadour to compose a new ballad. The lyrics would be innocent enough on the surface, perhaps a tale of a valiant warrior or a pastoral scene, but within those verses lay an acrostic poem or specific lines that, when read in a particular order, spelled out a secret message. "Meet me by the old well at dusk," might be cunningly hidden within seemingly unrelated stanzas. Professor Julian Barnes, a musicologist specializing in medieval performance, explains how troubadour songs, which with allegory and double entendre, were perfect for conveying hidden meanings. Public performance of such a song meant the message was delivered in plain sight, yet understood only by the intended recipient. Beyond lyrics, the very music itself could be coded. A specific melody repeated with a slight alteration could signify a particular emotion or instruction. A sudden pause in a familiar tune, a subtle change in tempo, or an unexpected dissonance could all be prearranged signals. For example, a young lady, Lady Isolde, whose heart yearned for Sir Tristan, might attend a feast where a musician played her favorite tune. Sir Tristan, knowing their secret code, would listen intently. If the musician, perhaps subtly instructed by Isolde, introduced a particular, almost imperceptible hesitation before a specific note, it might mean, "I am watched." If a sustained note was held just a beat too long, it might signify, "I long for you." These fleeting auditory cues, almost impossible for an untrained ear to discern, were their hidden language of longing and caution. The choice of instrument could also carry symbolic weight. The lute, often associated with romance and courtly love, might be played to serenade a beloved, but the specific string plucked or the way the chords were strummed could be a subtle instruction. The harp, often seen as a divine or spiritual instrument, might be used for songs of devotion. But a particular sequence of notes could signify something far more earthly. A melody performed on a recorder versus a drum, for instance, might signal different types of messages, a delicate, intimate one versus a bold, urgent one. The distinct sound of each instrument, its resonance and timbre, could be part of the unspoken emotional landscape. Chivalric tales and epic poems, often sung or recited, provided another layer for coded messages. A knight, preparing for a joust, might request a specific song to be sung, one that contained a hidden reference to his lady, a subtle nod to their shared secret. Or the song might contain a strategic piece of advice disguised as a heroic couplet. The audience would hear a tale of bravery, but the knight and his lady would hear a personal message, a whispered encouragement, or a warning. The specific names used in the ballad or the setting of the story could echo their own private world, creating a direct, if hidden, connection between the public performance and their private desires. The rhythm melancholy of a piece could also convey meaning. A slow, melancholic tune might signify sorrow or despair. A lively, uncut jig might signify hope or excitement. But within these broader moods, subtle variations could be used to communicate specific information. A sudden, almost imperceptible quickening of a beat in a sad song might signal an urgent need for action or a shift in circumstance. A deliberate slowing down of a festive tune might convey a sense of caution or a subtle warning. The very breath of the singer, the pause between verses, the emphasis on certain syllables, all could be controlled and manipulated to create layers of meaning. Consider the practical application. A noblewoman, Lady Genevieve, was deeply in love with the young scribe Arthur, a liaison strictly forbidden by her powerful father. Arthur, who often played the lute in the castle common room, would weave secret messages into his performances. He would compose songs where the first letter of each verse spelled out a coded phrase, or where certain words, when combined with specific musical notes, formed a message. For instance, the word rose might be sung on a high G, which for them secretly meant ready. The word thorns sung on a low C might mean danger. Lady Genevieve, seated among her family, would discreetly follow his playing, her heart pounding as she pieced together the fragments of his musical cipher, understanding his warnings or his longing. The subtle quiver in his voice, the slight tremor of his fingers on the strings, could also add an emotional layer to the objective message, conveying his own fear or excitement. The choice of specific songs, even familiar ones, could carry hidden meaning. Couple might have their song, a tune that held special significance for them. If one of them requested this song, it might be a subtle way of asking for a meeting, or simply a way to express their enduring affection in public. The repetition of a specific phrase within a popular melody could also be a code. If a singer repeated a line about a silent stream 3 times, it might be a prearranged signal to meet by the river. This relied on shared memories and a deep intimacy, transforming common melodies into personal narratives. The context of the performance, whether it was a private serenade or a bustling public gathering, would also influence the subtlety and risk of the message. The role of the musician was paramount. They had to be trusted, discreet, and highly skilled. A musician who understood the secret code could actively participate in the communication, subtly altering notes or tempo to convey the full nuance of the message. They were not just performers. They were secret keepers, their instruments extensions of the lovers' hearts. The ability of the musician to maintain a neutral expression, even while conveying a message of profound love or dire warning, was crucial to the success of the secret. The musician's own creative interpretation of a song could also become part of the code, with specific flourishes or improvisations holding pre-arranged meanings. Finally, the very act of a lover dedicating a song to another, even publicly, could be a subtle declaration. While formal dedications were common, a carefully chosen song, perhaps one with particular melancholic themes or themes of longing, could be a secret message of enduring affection to a beloved in the crowd. The eyes of the singer meeting the eyes of the intended recipient, even for a fleeting moment, would seal the silent understanding. The shared experience of the music, the resonance of the notes in the air, the collective emotion of the audience, all these factors could amplify the private message, making it feel both grand and intimately personal. A secret whispered on the wind. Number 5. Subtle gestures and public signals. In the tightly controlled social environments of medieval courts and noble households, where every movement and interaction was scrutinized, lovers perfected the art of communication without words, using subtle gestures and almost imperceptible public signals. These were not grand dramatic displays, but rather fleeting moments, tiny movements that spoke volumes to the knowing eye, hidden in plain sight amidst the daily bustle. Consider the simple act of holding a fan, a common accessory for noblewomen. The way a lady held her fan, whether it was open, closed, or partially fanned, could convey a complex range of messages. A fan held wide open, obscuring part of her face, might signal caution or a warning, perhaps indicating that watchful eyes were present. A fan closed tightly and held near her heart could be a sign of affection or longing. A fan gently tapping her chin might suggest contemplation or indecision. These were not universally understood signals, but required a prearranged understanding between the lovers. Professor Caroline Finch, a historian of medieval manners, emphasizes that gestures were highly context-dependent and often personal to specific individuals or relationships. The speed of the fan's movement, the direction it was pointed, or the specific hand used to hold it could add further layers of meaning. The manipulation of clothing and accessories also played a crucial role. A lady, might subtly adjust a piece of jewelry, a brooch, or a necklace, perhaps tilting it in a specific direction or allowing it to catch the light in a particular way. A slight tug on a sleeve, a brush of a hand against a cloak, or a barely visible adjustment of a belt could all be deliberate, coded signals. For instance, a young man, a page named Leo, might be deeply infatuated with Lady Seraphina, who was well above his station. When serving at table, if Lady Seraphina desired to speak with him later, she might subtly brush a crumb from her velvet sleeve with her left hand, a gesture she knew Leo would recognize as a silent invitation to meet. If she used her right hand, it might be a warning of danger. These fleeting actions, easily dismissed as accidental by others, were carefully choreographed messages of desire or caution. Even walking patterns could be a form of silent communication. A deliberate change in pace, a slight detour in a well-trodden path, or a subtle adjustment in the direction of a stroll through the castle grounds could be a coded message. A lady might walk a specific route through a garden, pausing briefly by a particular rose bush to indicate a desire for a secret meeting. A knight entering a hall might choose a circuitous route passing near his beloved to indicate his presence or readiness to receive a signal. The rhythm of footsteps, the way they fell upon the stone floor, or the number of steps taken in a particular direction could be part of the silent, almost subconscious communication. The handling of common objects provided further opportunities. A handkerchief, for instance, could be dropped intentionally, not as a sign of clumsiness but as an invitation. The way it was picked up, or the hand used to return it, could further elaborate on the message. A knight might retrieve a dropped handkerchief, holding it for a moment longer than necessary, his eyes meeting hers, a silent exchange of longing. Or he might carefully fold it in a specific way before returning it, a prearranged signal of acceptance or refusal. Color or embroidery of the handkerchief itself might also play a part, adding to the layers of symbolic meaning. Subtle changes in posture or seating arrangements could also convey messages. If a lady usually sat facing one direction but suddenly shifted to face another, it could be a signal to her beloved, perhaps indicating where a watchful eye was positioned or where a message was hidden. A deliberate leaning towards or away from someone, a slight inclination of the head, or the placement of hands on a lap or a table could all be part of a subtle, unspoken dialogue. These were body language cues, taken to an extreme, refined into a secret language. Professor Edgar Vance, a medieval historian, details accounts of courtly life where such subtle shifts in posture were carefully observed, not just for general social etiquette, but for specific personal meanings. The fleeting glance, perhaps the most common and powerful of all nonverbal signals, was refined into an art form. A lover might cast a quick, almost imperceptible glance towards a specific object or a particular person in the room, drawing their beloved's attention without uttering a word. Prolonged gaze, even for a few seconds, could convey immense longing or a deep connection. A silent conversation played out in the space between two pairs of eyes. Quick look away, a downcast gaze, or a sudden widening of the eyes could signal fear, warning, or excitement. The intensity of the gaze, the tilt of the head, or the slight lift of an eyebrow could all be part of this highly intricate, high-stakes visual communication. The very act of meeting eyes in a crowded room could be an intensely intimate and dangerous act. Even seemingly mundane actions, such as drinking from a cup, could be imbued with secret meaning. A lover might take a sip of wine and then carefully wipe the rim of the cup with their thumb, a gesture understood only by the beloved as a signal to be cautious or to wait. The specific number of sips taken, or the way the cup was placed back on the table, could also be part of the coded message. These small, everyday actions were transformed into deliberate, meaningful signals requiring a deep level of observation and a shared understanding between the lovers. Clink of the cup on the table, the specific angle it was placed, or the amount of liquid left within it, all could become subtle components of this silent dialogue. The strategic placement of one's body in a room was also a powerful tool. A lover might deliberately position themselves near a door, a window, or a specific piece of furniture to signal their presence, their availability, or their desire for a private conversation. Standing at a specific angle or subtly moving closer to or further away from another individual could convey intimacy or distance. These were not accidental positions but carefully chosen points on a stage where the lovers were the only actors performing their secret play for each other. The way one moved through a crowd, creating an opening or closing a path, could also be part of the unspoken instruction or invitation. The shared understanding of these signals required immense trust and intuition. A misinterpretation could lead to heartbreak or worse, discovery. The lovers had to be highly attuned to each other's habits, quirks, and subtle mannerisms, transforming them into a private lexicon of love and longing. These were the whispers of the heart, seen not heard, felt rather than spoken, in a world where true love often had to remain a dangerous secret. The ability to read these signals was a skill refined over time, a dance of intuition and precise observation where every slight movement held the potential for profound meaning. Number 6, the art of poetic allusion and riddles. In medieval Europe, where poetry was a revered art form and riddles were a popular intellectual pastime, lovers often turned to the elegance of verse and the cunning of allegory to communicate their deepest, most forbidden feelings. This was a sophisticated form of communication requiring not just cleverness from the sender, but also intelligence and intimate knowledge from the receiver. A seemingly innocent poem, recited in public or gifted in a manuscript, could contain layers of meaning discernible only to the beloved. Consider the structure of an acrostic poem where the first letter of each line, when read vertically, spells out a hidden message. A courtly poet, perhaps, in love with a noblewoman, might compose a lengthy poem of praise or lament, seemingly about a universal theme of love or sorrow. Yet hidden within its lines, the name of his beloved or a specific rendezvous point could be meticulously spelled out. For instance, the opening lines of a seemingly innocuous ballad might begin, "My heart beats ever for thee, each moment of my life a yearning. Even if the world forbids, truly my love, you are my star. Only for you my soul does crave." The first letters would spell out meet, a direct and urgent message, yet one completely concealed from the uninitiated listener. Professor Anya Harma, an expert in medieval poetic forms, notes that acrostics were not just literary games but serious tools for secret communication in various contexts. Beyond acrostics, the use of intricate metaphors and allusions allowed lovers to speak of their passion in plain sight. A poem might describe a secret garden or a hidden spring that only the beloved would recognize as a metaphor for their private meeting place or their clandestine relationship. References to specific historical events, mythological figures, or even constellations could carry a secondary personal meaning. For example, a poem describing the constellation Lyra the harp might subtly allude to a specific song they shared, or a secret meeting place beneath the stars. The very act of deciphering these layers of meaning deepened the intimacy and intellectual connection between the lovers. Riddles, often exchanged as a form of entertainment in medieval courts, were perfect vehicles for secret messages. A riddle could be posed publicly, its solution seemingly abstract or generic, but for the beloved, the answer would be deeply personal. "I am born of silence, grow in darkness and fade with the sun. I promise joy, but bring only risk. What am I?" The general answer might be a dream, but for the lovers, it could be our secret love. The very challenge of solving the riddle became part of the romantic game, a test of mutual understanding and shared intellect. The elegance of the riddle lay in its ability to be both public and profoundly private. The choice of specific vocabulary could also be a code. Certain words, seemingly ordinary, might carry a pre-arranged, shared meaning for the lovers. A word like shadow might secretly refer to a specific time of day, or stone might signify a particular bench or wall. These were linguistic keys, unlocking hidden meanings within seemingly conventional verses. A poem filled with references to specific colors might be a subtle nod to the language of flowers or clothing, reinforcing messages conveyed through other means. The rhythm and meter of the poem, too, could hold hidden clues. A sudden change in meter or an unusual rhyming scheme could alert the beloved that a deeper message was present. Consider the tale of a noblewoman, Lady Isolde, whose heart belonged to a clever young squire Tristan, a man without land or title. Tristan, a talented poet, would often perform his verses at court. He would compose ballads seemingly about the sorrows of unrequited love, a common theme. But within one such poem, he might weave in a stanza that spoke of the falcon's flight at dawn to the tallest tower where ivy clings. For the court, it was just a poetic image, but for Isolde, it was a precise instruction. Meet me at dawn at the highest tower, where the ivy grows. The allusions were specific enough for her to recognize, but vague enough to be dismissed as mere poetry by others. The inclusion of a specific bird or a particular type of foliage added to the precision of the coded message. The very act of composing and sharing poetry was an intimate one. In an era where much literature was passed down orally or copied by hand, a poem specifically penned for one person carried immense weight. A lover might carefully transcribe a poem into a small personal manuscript, making subtle alterations to a few words or lines that would be invisible to anyone but the intended recipient. These slight deviations from a known text would be the key to the hidden message, a testament to their shared knowledge and meticulous attention to detail. The type of script used, the color of the ink, or the presence of a unique flourish could also be part of the silent communication, revealing the sender's hand and intentions. Sometimes, the code lay in the number of lines, stanzas, or even the count of syllables within a poem. A specific numerical sequence, known only to the lovers, could direct them to a particular passage in a shared book, or a specific date for a rendezvous. A poem with exactly 13 lines might refer to a specific date, or a poem where every fifth word spelled out a secret phrase. This added a layer of intellectual challenge, making the deciphering process a shared mental journey, strengthening their bond. The intellectual prowess required for both encrypting and decoding such messages made the communication all the more precious and exclusive. The dangerous allure of poetic illusion was that it relied on shared context and personal history. An inside joke, a shared memory, or a private understanding of a symbol could be woven into the fabric of a verse. A seemingly random reference to a particular flower or a specific place might be a coded reference to a moment only they shared. This made the communication intensely personal, almost impossible for an outsider to break, yet fraught with the risk of misunderstanding. The beauty of this form of communication was that it transformed art into a living, breathing dialogue, where every word, every metaphor, every rhythm became a step in their secret dance of love and longing.